Welcome to my channel, The Orchid Hut. My name is Dana if you're new here, and thank you for taking some time today to watch one of my orchid videos. Today's video is going to be a little bit of a random chit chat, but loaded with lots of information as well as some plant updates. And along the way, as I'm talking through plants that have been featured in previous videos, I will put a link to that previous video and it will kind of pop up in the upper right hand corner of the screen. And if you would like to go back and watch that video so that you can get the complete story of where I've been with the orchid that I'm talking about today, then you can click on that link and it will take you to the earlier video. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to start with today is the Texas weather, unpredictable as she is. It is mid 80 Fahrenheit today, so very warm. It's almost like we're back to August and September during the day. And there is a very, very blustery, dry, hot south wind. And I'm going to insert a little clip here of my setup outside for my orchids. They are in the garage, taking up a parking space, and they're in there mostly because we have some nighttime temperatures now that just, from one day to the next, just drop into the 40s. So they're in the garage for that reason, but then during the day, there's no reason at all why they can't get some fresh air and a breeze and some sunlight. So I have them on the garage floor. The exposure, I would say, is probably like south facing, and I put my shade cloth up there, but you can see what the wind is doing to the shade cloth. I mean, they're fine that way. It's not entirely convenient, but they're all taken care of, checked on every day, protected from the hot sun. If it gets cold, they're protected from the nighttime cold temperatures. Our weather in Texas right now is just up and down, with every kind of extreme imaginable. So every day I have to monitor that and decide what to do with them next. Okay, so that's the status of the outdoor orchids. I want to start with, let me move some of these plants out of the way. We're going to get to this one in particular in just a little bit. She is absolutely gorgeous, so stay tuned for that one at the very end. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is joining and or looking up some orchid societies. Okay, now I'm going to have to get a paper towel. There's a wet spot here from the plants and I don't want to get my magazines wet. Okay, so one of the things I did is I joined the American Orchid Society. Okay, now, pros and cons. You do have to pay for a subscription, but you get some, benefits from being a member, different discounts for shopping online for orchids and attending events, and you get some access to webinars and videos by being a member. And then you also get these really, really nice magazines that have a lot of orchid information in them. Okay, now, the first thing I guess to sort of know about this is that, when you get one of these magazines, you realize how much you don't know about orchids. There's a lot in these magazines that are very, very technical. And sometimes it's like I have to read the article 2, 3, 4 times to try to get as much out of it as possible. But that aside, there's still a lot in this magazine that I'm able to easily grasp, and I go, oh, I learned something new. Oh, I learned something new again. So, part of this magazine is truly a little bit over my head as far as being an orchid grower goes. But then there's still a lot of good, helpful information that I'm able to learn from these magazines. So this was I just subscribed for my birthday about a month ago, and I received my first magazines in the mail. Very impressed with it. You know, gorgeous, gorgeous orchid photos. But, you know, worth keeping and even using as a reference, you know, to go back to later if you're looking for a certain kind of information. They were having a special, this was I think a special edition for new members. It was all about Vandas. And again, everything technical that you could possibly want to know about Vandas. But even so, you know, as I was reading through it, I learned an awful lot. Okay, so first thing, you know, join your National Orchid Society or, you know, your local chapter, find what that is, because it's a great way to get more informed and more involved with growing orchids. Okay, now moving on to my Cymbidium that I repotted a while ago. This was the one that had the awful, stinky, rotten root system. And I'll put a link above to show that repotting for this Cymbidium. And I did kind of a special media mix for it. And, you know, I guess the good news is that it's not dying, you know, so that's great. It seems to be kind of hanging in there. It did lose another leaf or two since I repotted it, but maybe just the tiniest bit. You know, the new growth is, you know, still there. I do feel like, though, that I need to stake it in some way because its root system was so small and this media is so chunky. Outside in that south wind that was blowing, it was just like a sail. The whole thing was toppling over. So I do feel like I need to stake it or possibly just put it in a pot that's a little bit heavier so it doesn't blow over. So the Cymbidium is doing well. The next one that I want to show you is my green lantern dendrobium. This was also in a potting video not too long ago, and it was one of the Better Grow orchids from my local home improvement store, and it had 2 leaves that were going bad really quickly, and I have to say that since it's been repotted, it has lost 2 more leaves to that sort of yellow black spot situation that it had on the leaves when I like the leaves had when I repotted it. But that seems to have slowed up now. So I would say within the last week maybe, it doesn't show signs of any more leaves beginning to do that. So now what I do is I wait for new growth, and hopefully this one can make a better root system. Okay, so the green lantern is doing fine. This is the orchid that I had in the tea soak video just a few days ago. And you can see that it's still, you know, staying pretty well hydrated. When I potted it, I did do something a tiny bit different than I do for my other Phalaenopsis repots. I added a bit more sphagnum moss into the regular Phalaenopsis mix that I use, simply because I knew that this orchid was going to have a little bit of an adjustment and more difficult time staying hydrated. So in this pot, you can see where there's a couple of, you know, 7 or 8 extra strands of sphagnum moss in there to help retain the moisture. I am watering it right now, maybe like about every 3 days. Not like a big gush of water all through the pot, but around the edges, just to kind of keep it more evenly moist, because I worked so hard to get it rehydrated. I don't want it to go backwards now. So, but it's still looking really good. So I'm happy with this so far. And then the final thing I wanted to share with you today is this new orchid that I found at my grocery store. Now, there's a little bit of a funny story behind this. I had gone into the grocery store with my husband, okay? And he always, I think, tries to sort of steer me away from the orchid displays because he knows I can't resist. But anyway, we went by the orchid displays, and I saw this orchid in a bag, and instinctively, I just reached for it and snatched it up. And he said, "We can't buy that orchid right now. We're going someplace else. It can't stay in the car." And I said, "Well, the grocery store is only like 3 minutes from our house. We can go back home and drop this orchid off. This one is mine." Well, for those of you that purchase orchids frequently, you know that finding one with mottled leaves is not that easy to do. And you also know finding a Phalaenopsis with fragrance is not that easy to do. Well, and this one has both. It has these gorgeous, gorgeous mottled leaves. It has really, really blushing pink and yellow blooms with little freckles. And it smells, the best way to describe it is spicy. It almost smells like Thanksgiving cinnamon, allspice, clove, nutmeg, kind of all mixed together spiciness. So it really does remind me of Thanksgiving as far as the spicy smell goes. Now, so then, of course it's a no ID. So I posted on the American Orchid Society and I said, can anyone identify this? Is it recognizable? Knowing that, these are hybridized over and over again, and sometimes, no one can really recognize what its name is or what its parentage is. But I did get answers from a couple of people who said, well, it probably has Schilleriana in its background somewhere because of the leaves and the freckles on the pink blooms. So, I know a little bit maybe about its background, even if I never have a name for it. The only thing I'm having to watch, and you can see I've already removed that cheap plastic tight pot. I'm watching these roots because this is like some sort of spongy peat something or another plug, like a spongy peat plug. And I don't know what the roots inside of there look like, but the roots that are on the outside of this, I do not want them to begin to rot or dry out or stay too wet. So I'm monitoring this one closely. If I have to repot it while it's still in bloom, then so be it. But, just could not resist this one. I thought it was so unique. I wish I could capture the smell over video for you. Okay, so that's the end of our little orchid chat for today. I hope you enjoyed the updates. Be sure to look up your national or local Orchid Society if you're not a member. And if you enjoyed this video or learned something new, please hit the thumbs up button. The subscribe button will be in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. Talk to you next time.